tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from Wicked.
Are people born wicked? Or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?
With the help of our special guest, CMO at Flywire. Allison, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, goodness. I am so excited to have you on the show. I love Wicked. I love Flywire. And I love chatting with you today.
Same. Love all those things as well.
So why the heck did you pick Wicked to talk about?
One, I know we're a few months now from its big debut, but it's always been a long time sort of joy of mine. I remember seeing the show in the early 2000s, actually in London. And I was not familiar with Wicked as the storyline. So I thought, like many other people, you're learning about the Wicked Witch, right? So I figured I already knew what the story was. I've already seen the Wizard of Oz. I know what the story is. Like, the Wicked Witch is horrible. She's the villain. And I was completely blown away that I was wrong and that wasn't actually the story at all. So I think what I have always loved about it is it's something that we all think that we know, but it really reimagines the Wizard of Oz and the story through a completely different lens.
I couldn't agree more. Excited to dig in. But first, tell us a little bit about your role as CMO, and not just CMO, you're also the GM of US Education and many other things. Tell us about your role at Flywire.
Sure. So I am currently with Flywire. So I've been at Flywire for about 6.5 years now. It's an incredible company. So Flywire is a payments and software company. And we focus on, think of high stakes, high value payments in large digitally underserved industries such as education, healthcare, travel, and B2B. We make some of the most important payments and complex payments that people and businesses make, and we make them seamless. I serve as our Chief Marketing Officer, which means I get to lead our incredible global marketing team across the verticals we serve, as well as our corporate marketing. Along with that, I also oversee our RevOps function. So all the great things of how do we measure all of marketing and sales and channel effectiveness. And then I didn't seem to have enough to do. So I put on another hat last year and currently serving as our GM of our US education business. So, that is exciting because it's not just telling our story and serving as CMO and driving pipeline. It's also really focusing on how do we deliver those great client outcomes and being really close to our clients.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm very interested in payments, so I'm interested in how you market it. And we'll get into that later. Meredith, what the heck is Wicked?
So, as Allison mentioned, Wicked is the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. And one of the most retellings is in a film by Universal Pictures starring Cynthia Erivo as the Wicked Witch, Elphaba, and Ariana Grande as Glinda the Good Witch.
What? What are you staring at? Do I have something in my teeth?
No, it's just... you're green.
I am.
For me, when I was looking into the making of it, which I always love to do, the most shocking...
Mary, I have to just interrupt really quick and say, we're talking about the movie, not the play.
That's right. The movie.
But we will talk a little bit about the play.
Yes. Yeah.
But primarily talking about the movie.
There's so many iterations of this story that we'll definitely get into. But as far as the movie goes, The most shocking part for me was that Cynthia and Ariana are actually singing live. So what you hear in the movie is not pre-recorded. And it's even more mind-blowing given the fact that at least Cynthia was doing her own stunts. So there's a moment where she's like in a corset, hanging upside down from a harness, strung up on wires, and she's still belting Defying Gravity somehow.
So if you care to find me, up to the western sky, has someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly.
Has that ever happened in a movie before?
As for the physical flying of it all, once all is said and done, you're now flying with a corset and a harness and songs. And when it works, it really does feel like magic.
Which is so wild. They're all so talented. And she said she had to change the way that she breathed to pull it off. So it's pretty mind-blowing. And director John Chu said, "How can you hire an actor that does their own stunts, amazing acting, sings, and then you integrate all three of these things together and land it over and over and over and over and over again?" So it's very wild to think about. Another challenge that they had was getting Cynthia Erivo to appear that particular shade of green. And a lot of it is paint, but they had to do tons of tests to find the color that was skin-like and not face paint-like and reflected light instead of absorbing it, so she would show up well on film. So they ended up going with a green that they described as having a highlighter yellow undertone that would do the trick. But then they had to plan for up to 4 hours every morning before filming so they could actually apply the paint to Cynthia. And they even put it on under her wig so that if light showed through, that it would still appear her skin color. And then to make the rest of her skin look green, the costume designer lined her dresses with fabric that was that shade of green as well. So lots of preparation for each day of filming. And that actually was because Cynthia had input on her costume and makeup, and she didn't want to just appear the color on with CGI in post. She said, "I wanted to look back at a reflection and see a green woman in front of me. I really wanted for her skin to feel textured. When you look at it, there's freckles and there's tone and shade, just like skin should be. She has these green eyes that come from the genetic makeup of who she is, and it isn't just on her, it's in her." So the production of the movie was all about being real. The sets were mostly real, including the yellow brick road, which is mind-blowing. Ariana also did her stunts, and they planted an actual field of 9 million tulips so the Munchkins could collect color from a real field, not a CGI field. And they really went all out on production of the movie.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz summons you to the Emerald City.
Come with me.
What?
To meet the wizard.
I couldn't possibly. This is your moment. I'm coming.
To go back to the beginning, though, Wicked, like we talked about, has so many iterations. It started as a novel. It was titled Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which was written by Gregory Maguire in 1995. And then it was adapted for Broadway by composer Stephen Schwartz, and that premiered in 2003. And then the musical also had a book associated with it called Wicked by Winnie Holzman, which was loosely based on Gregory Maguire's book. And then just last year was made into a film. So many different retellings. But the Broadway show is the second highest grossing of all time, bringing in over $1.7 billion. The first is The Lion King, and the third is Phantom of the Opera, in case you're wondering. And the movie is the top-grossing film adaptation of a Broadway musical. And as of March 31st, it had made over $744 million worldwide. It also won 2 Oscars out of 10 nominations for Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. So very well acclaimed as well. But Allison, I'm wondering sort of what marketing lessons you would take from the story.
That is a great question. I also didn't know that they planted 9 million tulips,
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It's a lot of flowers or poppies. So I would say a couple of things. Like one is, as I mentioned before, I think many of us, particularly if you're not as close to all of the books and adaptations, you think you already know the story. So I think some of the lessons are reframing what, people think they know. And if we're talking from a marketing perspective about your brand, right? So we all tend to think of like all the brands that we associate things with. And for a company that's going from, hey, we're so well known for this, right? Sometimes it's hard. It's great when you're really good at something, you're really well known. But when you want to evolve, that can be difficult because you're so well known for that thing. So having the recognition that you do more, whether you're expanding products, you're expanding software, or entering new markets, I think that is such a great lesson for marketers of how do you really reframe what people think they know about you and your brand. I also think the other thing that I found beyond just the movie itself is so much of it a movement, right? Of like people were obsessed, like you went to theaters and people were dressed in costume. And there was such a following for this and still is, right? And I think there's lots of anticipation of even the second part of it. So I think that's another one of how do you really cultivate that community, whether that's your clients, the advocacy, and make people feel that deep passion for what you do and how you serve the industries that you're in. And I think the other is, beyond, yes, it is visually striking. There's so many things that make it so amazing. And I would say, like, how do you be bold and unforgettable? I think some of, Meredith, you mentioned some of the things of doing own stunts, singing live. Like when you watch it, knowing that, it actually makes it that much more powerful and incredible. Like that is done by the actor. So I think also the lesson of like, how do you be bold and want to make, your brand unforgettable?
Yeah, absolutely.
It crosses that chasm for me, which many of the things that we discuss on this show for the reason that why they're remarkable is because you literally want to talk about it with other people. Mm-hmm. But it crosses that chasm of like, you want to know how it got made. And people talk about how it got made. And there's so many little things that we wanted to know. So like first, we wanted to know who are they going to cast?
Yes.
Then we wanted to know, can Ariana Grande actually do this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, can she sing in like this? Can she be this character? Like, also both of these actors are following like iconic actors that were in the musical who were the characters, right? Who obviously they bring, into the film, which is really cool. But like those are all the little things that you just like pick at your attention and makes you want to watch it, right? And you're like, can they, if they're actually, they're singing live. They're not just singing, they're singing live. You're like, can they do that? All of those little things that I think make you just so interested in the outcome of this thing beyond just, is it an adaptation? And I think like adaptations have this natural curiosity and sometimes morbid curiosity where the audience says, can they do it or are they going to screw it up, right? Like, am I going to watch the train wreck as we've seen so many times? And this, like, it passed all of those expectations.
Right.
And like people still had scuttlebutt about it. Of course, they always will. But this just passed everybody's expectations of that stuff. And I remember my wife and I, my wife is a huge Wicked fan. She can sing very well. She used to be a singer in a band. And so like she sings, Gravity and stuff in my house. It's great. And like when that moment in the movie happens, like you are glued to the screen, right? Can she do Gravity? Right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know. Anyways. And so that's the stuff that I think like just make it so special. It's just, they took something that was, the musical is literally perfect. And they took it and you go, you know this thing that everybody loves that's perfect, that's one of the best things ever? Yeah, like go beat that. Mm-hmm. Right? And what they did was say, hey, we're not going to try to beat it, but we're going to make something that's equally cool in its own right.
Yep.
Meredith, what are your takeaways?
One of them has to do with just making everything feel as authentic and real as possible. And I think really creating an experience for your audience through paying attention to all those details. I think showing off your true talent in your content, like Cynthia and Ariana are amazing singers and performers. And I think this really doesn't just use their talent, but it almost challenges them too, to really test the bounds of that. And I think you really see that in their performance as well. And then I think color can be really powerful too. Like that particular green shade is so important for Elphaba's character that they really had to dial it in and make sure that it felt authentic. And so I think you can use color, obviously brand colors and all of that, as a powerful tool as well. So I think those were my lessons.
Yeah, obviously the attention to detail stuff, which we end up talking a lot about, the great film, television commercials, things like that, where they have like, huge attention to detail, is a big takeaway for me from a marketing perspective of like, going to the ends of the earth. But my caveat to that is, if you're going to do that, you got to let people know that you're doing it, right? So like, you need to that we talk about like marketing your marketing internally, right? Is like, hey, we're doing this big campaign, but this is why we're geniuses, and you're telling the rest of your company like, yeah, we're doing this really cool thing, but also this is why it's so brilliant. It's the same thing when you do really cool stuff in a film, because like, that's the stuff that I think there's tons of films that have done really crazy stuff, and a lot of that stuff is like, which is interesting. It all like, it all appears on social media, right? So you're like, oh, I get to watch when Dave Grohl made this thing, or like the idea of like, if you're going to put all the work in to do something so cool and amazing, you got to capture that information too, because that is just as interesting to some people as the content itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like the audience for Wicked is exactly the same as the target audience for the original Wizard of Oz? I don't know that really matters in the end, but I think it's interesting as just like almost a franchise. Because I remember there was a movie that came out in like the 80s, I want to say, called Return to Oz. That was still Wizard of Oz, but it feels, it's kind of a scary movie. You know what I mean?
I remember seeing that as a child and being like terrified of it.
Yeah. And it's still a Wizard of Oz movie, but it feels separate. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this feels like, could appeal to a totally different audience, but with some overlap, of course.
I also think that Wizard of Oz is still such a classic. So even when you think of, the audience it appealed to, like that's been, when was that movie made? The 30s, 40s. So you think of how long that's been running and still appeals to young generations today. So, I think there's a ton of crossover in terms of just the mass appeal it has. I think it probably appeals to viewers who weren't interested. I would even say like, my children at first, I have 11-year-old, 9-year-old, 5-year-old. 5-year-old just like sort of into watching it. The other two were like, I don't want to. And they both loved it. So, I think there's just such mass appeal with it.
Yeah.
So the one that I was thinking of is The Wiz, which is super popular with directed by Sidney Lumet and with Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. Pretty incredible. Yeah. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, 1939.
Yes.
But there was and then they had the one recently, Oz the Great and Powerful. Which I don't know if anyone liked.
Was that a Johnny Depp movie?
It was James Franco. Oh, yeah, I did see that. It was weird.
Okay, I don't know if I saw that one.
Yeah. Well, but this is like the point, right? It's like, so Oz the Great and Powerful comes out in 2013. And like, so, 6.3 on IMDb. I don't know how popular it was, but 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, right? And so a decade later, let's bring out Wicked. It's like, I think that there's a great lesson in here of, I think if you were a marketing person and you're like, what someone would say is, we already tried that, right? We've already done it. It's been done, right? Like our company has already done that. We tried the spinoff. Who's cooler than the Wizard of Oz? Like we made the story about him and that didn't work. And we got like a super famous actor and there's all these other people. Like we did it. And yet you go and make Wicked, which is 88% Rotten Tomatoes. Everybody loves it. 7.4 on IMDb. Smash hit, $750 million, and way growing. And it's going to do another $1 billion next for the sequel. So I just think that sometimes like in marketing, people just take a channel or a tactic or like an idea or a content thing and just say that, oh, we've tried that. Yes. And I think it's on a great CMO to go, did you really? And I'll give an example really short. It's just like we've made so many different podcasts and video series for people and they're like, oh, we've already tried podcasts. You're like, you've tried podcasts. Like you've tried like all the iterations of audio driven, format for your audience? Like you did it all. You did a news show, a talk show. You did, interview style. You did scripted. You did fiction. Yeah. Like you did it all. I'm like, no, you did 6 episodes of a series with your CEO 11 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So yes. I don't know.
It is, that's very true, right? And I think often marketers get stuck in the trap of finding like, oh, well, one thing works, we'll just keep repeating that. And then you do start to push people. It's like, see lots of activity, right? Is it working? Or like, why don't we try this? We've done that before. Oh, I don't know that would be any value. We've done that before. But I think that's like sort of the lesson and the beauty in this. Taking something that everyone already thought they knew and they thought they knew the story. It's like, we know what that is, and completely reframing it. And I think, that's where you just think of us as businesses, us as consumers of both, say you are, businesses buying software, consumers in our own right. There's so much clutter. So like the brands that stick out and do things differently. And even if it is trying the same channel, but in a different way, like there's so much power in that.
Yeah. And I think like, I always come back to conviction. And so many times on this show, when we study something that's great, it's just somebody had a huge conviction that this thing needed to exist. And there's really not data to back that up, right? It's like, again, like the Wicked thing, you're like, well, it's the most successful IP of all time, or like one of the most successful pieces of Broadway IP, I mean. And it's, the envelope math, and you go, yeah, of course it's going to be a hit, but it's like, that's just not true, because if that was true, then Oz the Great and Powerful, whatever, would have done better than it did, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's not really true. And there's that piece. And then the other piece of this, which is Wicked, the original idea and story, is a huge risk. Mm-hmm. Because like the coolest thing about the bad guy is that they're bad, right? Like that's like we've talked about this on the show. Like the reason why the bad guy or the villains are so cool is because they're so unpredictable. Mm-hmm. They're so weird and they do stuff. And so you're glued to them. Like the Joker is the best because you don't know what the Joker is going to do next, right? The Wicked Witch of the West is as bad as it gets. And the original story of being like, but actually,
yeah,
she came from somewhere too, is a huge risk.
Yeah.
And like, how many CMOs are like, do you really want to take that big of a risk to say, hey, we're going to take a sacred cow and turn it upside down?
Yeah. It's hard, right? It's risky. So, and I think, that's always, I think where the brands that you see do incredibly well are the ones that do and don't play it safe and take the risks, but a lot of them fail too, right? I think part of it is knowing like when you fail, how do you pivot? But until you take those risks, you're not going to know. Until you try those new channels, you're not going to know, right? So I think sort of the playing it safe, you're going to end up with a mediocre brand and mediocre sales.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And you're gonna give yourself enough rope, as they say. Mm-hmm. Final thing on Wicked that I just have to talk about is the original brand poster, the Broadway brand poster, is just elite level visual design. And I just remember that just plastered all over everything in San Francisco when I was a kid. And that bright green and the hat and the just such a good brand. Mm-hmm. And it's just always a takeaway for me that like visual design is like so incredibly powerful when it's done right.
Yeah.
And I love that they did the version of the trailer where they just mimicked, the two women, mimicking basically the same Broadway posters. Is
the really poster, great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I remember like when those came out, when they announced Wicked and they announced like who's playing it, and you saw her in the green paint, and you saw Ariana Grande with the blonde hair and everything, and you're like, holy crap, they're really doing this. This is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears to just how you think about, marketing strategy broadly, and like how content and brand and these things fit into how you think about your strategy.
That is a great question. So I think a few things, and I'll take it from my, my current role as at Flywire is one, of course, we've got our brand as our, global payments and software company, but we serve very specific markets: education, healthcare, travel, and B2B. Our product is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and nor can our marketing be. And I remember that being like, when I started over 6 years ago, of thinking, how do I scale this team? How do I scale our marketing? How do I scale our brand, right? Because, even if you think of being well-known in our roots or where we started in education, that message does not resonate in B2B, right? So how do we make sure that we are really tailoring it to the markets that we're in, the buyers and the clients that we serve? And those channels even vary. Sales cycles vary. So therefore channels vary. I think one is really making sure that we understand, again, as we operate as a global company and a global brand, how do you understand those local nuances? So as an example, we do a lot of work in different markets of the world, China and India being two. So even when it comes to our brand and our strategy, nothing we do, say in the US, is going to work in China. One, the channels aren't even the same, right? So making sure, how are we hyper local? How do we understand the market? How do we, partner with key opinion leaders? How do we leverage our sales teams on the ground and our clients on the ground and in region to really be that feedback and that voice of the customer? But even the way we show up, the way our brand is displayed, the channels we use, right? Those are very targeted to that market. Same thing in India, right? If we were casting, say you're doing social campaigns or video, right? It's very important that you are very local. Dialect is local. Talent is local. If you're saying, hey, we serve students and families, well, if you don't have students and families that are local, that is not going to resonate. So, as we look across that, and even if you think of a marketing and content strategy, there are just, again, different plays of where you'll see things that, high volume inbound and digital marketing work really well in one vertical, not so much in the other, where you're marketing to already an existing audience, but you're really trying to expand that relationship. Sort of the lesson of Wicked of how do you get people to know you for more than what they've already always known you for. Hey, you're really good at that. Oh, I didn't realize you had software that could solve all of my payment challenges. And that is how do you get closer to the client. I think we've found things and, sort of some of the basic channels of how do you get your clients together? How do you do client conferences where you're bringing people together for 2 days where it's all about them, right? You're talking, it's not a commercial for your product, but what are the trends in the industry? How are you listening to that feedback? How are you bringing it to market? How are they learning from each other? How are they bettering themselves in the industry? So are you bringing in industry speakers? Are they, bringing in people who have implemented best practices? And I think those are the things, like it's one of those things where I think a lot of companies are like, oh, do I do that? Do I not do that? I think also in this age of AI, the things like being with your clients in person, that actually becomes more important, right? Getting that undivided attention that's not always digital in that world and having those tangible outcomes. So to your question, it certainly varies, right? So it's not this holistic, we do this, so we just deploy that in all regions and it works easily. There are some things that scale. And then there are others, right, that don't, just simply because the industries and the markets we operate in are just vastly different.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you that. So because, obviously the payment space is a very crowded space. There's a lot of folks doing different things. And it seems like the way that you all differentiate is pretty unique. And so, and working in these specific industries and especially geos and things like that. So I was just curious, how you just thought about that differentiation piece.
Yeah, I always get really excited when I talk about this at Flywire because I think at the core of what we do, right, is payments and software, and sort of our North Star being like the software that we create for our clients is what drives the value in those payments. Yep. And, how we sort of evolved and expanded is building, our payments platform. So you think of the sending and receiving of money. Great. Everyone can do that. Payments companies do that. But where we start to differentiate and what is so unique to Flywire is we've built our own payment network. So we have built, the rails, the relationships with banks, with local payment providers in markets. with alternative payment methods with, say, Trustly or Boleto or Alipay, PayPal, Venmo. And then really that core differentiator is what I talked about before is that vertical piece, right? So the vertical software that we build on top that serves the markets we serve. So when you think of education, and let's take US education, for example, right? What we're solving for is really moving all of the money for our clients and being able to extend seamless payment experiences for their students, whether they're their international students or their domestic students. It's about providing affordable solutions for payment plans, being able to use software that's helping to make sure that students don't default and you're catching them before they may have to get sent to collections and keeping them enrolled because schools need to keep them enrolled. Like that software is that core differentiator, as well as like our global reach, right? We don't just say like, hey, we're going to run, our sales organization and sell into Germany, but from Boston, like that doesn't work. Knowing those local markets is incredibly important. And you see that really employed across all of our verticals with healthcare, with travel, with B2B. Those verticals are very unique and the buyers we serve are very unique. And I think that's what's that's made us successful as a company is really that vertical specific offering.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. Obviously, you must, going to market to all of those different places is completely different. I know you touched on that a little bit, but how do you sort of manage that complexity?
So I am lucky that I have a very incredible marketing organization and team. So, I think that was one thing that I was faced with of how do you scale this, right? Like, because you can't have a full-blown marketing organization in every vertical, then you're going to have complete inconsistency. I get asked a lot of like, how do you make sure there's brand consistency, right? With such different markets that you serve in different verticals. So one is, how we've scaled is we do have our vertically focused marketing teams. So education, healthcare, travel, B2B. But then that even varies by market, right? So you could have teams focused on Asia Pacific. You could have teams focused on China market, on India market. But where we scale really is we're making sure that those teams are really close to our clients, our product, what's happening in the field, what's happening in local market, who are the players we do. Is it technical integration partners we need to be doing more with? Is it channel partners? What are the associations or the media that we need to be involved in? What are the events that we need to be at? But where we drive our scale is, think of the horizontal functions across our marketing org. It's our corporate marketing team, and that's really our digital strategy, our content strategy. So really that team working closely with that vertical teams of how do we continue to drive content in various markets, our corporate communications, press, social media, and then also RevOps, right? So those two scaling across those vertical marketing functions and supporting those to make sure we can go to market faster, right? But we've got consistency and how we look at it. Again, we're a publicly traded company, right? So like, you're not just going to put out a press release because you feel like it, because you did something great. Like we have to make sure that there's a lens on that and we're driving consistency in that way. And we do that through our corporate marketing team too.
Amazing. What's working for your audience right now from a content perspective?
I think like many of us, we're overwhelmed by everything that's out there right now. Like there's lots of things happening across the world. There's lots of changes in just technology in general and AI. But I think what works is like, that's always the thing of like, there's always this desire from marketing. It's like, ooh, I know, let's create a white paper no one asked for. Let's create a blog post no one asked for. But how are we staying close to like what is happening in market and what is going to be most valuable for our clients, right? So some of the things that still continue to work, right? Like a webinar will work if it is the valuable content that folks want to hear, whether that's like enrollment trends or the data that we sit upon from a payments company. So we can share with our clients, the trends we see in global markets. I'll go back to like, I think we've done a pretty great job from a just marketing perspective of creating these incredible experiences for our clients in different markets and bringing our clients together and creating just really great events of like, one, they're learning how to better use what they have, but also learning what else they could use and expand into, learning from each other and networking. And then I think from, we do a lot of digital. So I think from a digital perspective, that's even changing though, right? Because all marketers have optimized for the last 15 plus years of how do you optimize for your SEO, your website, and Google. That's going to change a lot. So even how are we shifting now to generative search, making sure we're showing up in the right places, particularly in markets like travel and B2B, where you are just kind of seeing that shift in behavior of where people are finding information.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite campaign that you've ran over the past 6 years?
Oh, boy. I have lots. So I'd say like two that really stand out is one thing that I love so much about what we do. It's such a mission-driven organization, but you also think of the types of payments we serve. Like these are some of the most complex and high-stakes payments that people are making. So they're tuition payments, for money that people have saved for a lifetime to send their children to college, life-saving medical care.
Yeah, incredible.
Bucket list travel item that people have saved to take that luxury vacation in Thailand. And, for businesses, like large, complex B2B payments. So I love that piece of it. So we did a campaign 2 years ago now, the people behind the payments. And so much of that was like, how do we actually show the real people that are, not just like, yes, we're offering this tech, but like, how does this work? How has this changed the lives and the organizations of people who are using Flywire, who are on the payment side, but also equally, how does it change the lives of people that are using the software and experiencing it from, person, like their experience of their luxury trip is easy, right? You want to make sure it's not a clunky experience where they're going to pay for that. That student feels at ease and that family feels at ease as they're making their payment. So that was one that I loved. We did that across both, it was primarily digital, but we had a lot of video and a lot of incredible content and just focus on interviewing our clients to really how do we put the face of, the people in these industries that are doing incredible work and the clients that we serve. So that's one that stands out for me.
Amazing. Yeah. What else? Anything that we've missed so far on just like content or strategy or maybe the ROI of content?
Yeah. I mean, I think ROI this is a hard one, right? This is a hard one because I think oftentimes you want to be able to measure and understand how, as an organization, a marketing organization, what you're doing, is it driving, at the end of the day, if you're in a B2B company, you need to be driving revenue. So obviously, like when we look at it as a marketing organization, we're looking at how are we doing with driving things like pipeline, with driving deals, with driving revenue. Not everything is going to nicely, squarely tie to all of those things, but being able to own your narrative of knowing like, hey, we do these events or we put out this content. And when you see that engagement, right, we're seeing more engagement. And that means more eyeballs on our content. And that means more at-bats for our sales team. We're making it easier to break through. But I think oftentimes people go to right away of like, how many leads did that generate? And leads might be my least favorite measurement of all of marketing because it's a lever for sure. It's definitely a lever, but like that cannot be the be all end all because honestly, you could drive endless amounts of leads. It doesn't matter if they don't convert. And if that's not actually the engagement that you're looking for. But I oftentimes you'll see marketers either, kill something too quickly because it's like, oh, it didn't generate enough pipeline. And they're not really understanding like, how does this actually insert itself in the process and drive that value? So I think, I think that's really, really important. I think beyond that, we're also looking at from a content perspective, it's always the content team wanting to know like, where is this being used? So even how we've embedded that into our sales process, we, use conversational intelligence tools like Gong, right? So to understand like, is that being mentioned? Are they using the content that we've created? I think nothing makes marketer happier when they see that, right? It's like, oh, yes, they're using the right story and pitch and the references and the, all of the client advocacy. And looking at like, does that help close deals faster? Like, are those proof points and those stories, are they really helping to drive forward? So I think those are so many important things to look at.
Amazing. Do you have a best piece of advice for a CMO who is trying to figure out their sort of brand and content strategy?
I have lots. So I think there's a few lenses, right? Some people are amazing at telling a great story and building what could be a beautiful, striking, compelling brand. But if that is not matching right, to the revenue and the client story. So I think oftentimes enough, marketers aren't close enough to the client and really in the trenches of like, what are clients saying? Are we listening to the story? Are we listening to the feedback? Are we infusing this into everything we're doing, right? Oftentimes it's like, we're pumping it out. Yeah, I think it's great. And then you'll see more of the vanity metrics, click-throughs, opens, like, great. What is that actually doing? So I would say like, how do you one, make sure that you're getting, especially if it's like you're new, you're trying to figure out how do you do this, like get as close to the clients as possible to understand like what is resonating. I think oftentimes the first thing people do is like, let's hire an agency. I know, let's change the logo. Let's change the website. I think that's always the first thing everyone does. It's like, let's put in a new website. So I'd say get close to the clients as possible. And then the other is, this is always a lesson. I have to remind myself of doing this all the time. I think where most marketers struggle is they don't always articulate the value of marketing internally, right? Like in a B2B organization, you're going to continue. Everyone's a marketer. So no matter what industry you're in, everyone has an opinion about color, content, messaging, pitch, this, that. Everyone's going to have an opinion. And that leads to everyone requesting, right? Oftentimes you see marketers like so overwhelmed of like, oh my God, I'm doing so many things. And they don't take the time to articulate like, what is our mission? What's our purpose? What's our value? What are the goals we're putting in place? And like, how are we contributing to the success of this organization? Those I can't underscore enough of like reminding the organization, especially as it grows, right? Of the impact that marketing is happening and really the purpose and the mission for the team. That's an often overlooked one.
Amazing. Well, final thing here.
Yes.
What's coming up? What's exciting in Flywire world? What do you got going on from a marketing perspective or otherwise?
We have lots. Again, that's the great thing about being at a global company. Oftentimes I feel like sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I work at 4 or 5 different companies, which is what I love. I love being able to say like, what's happening in travel? You know, we've got incredible travel business, amazing clients that we serve all over the world. So continuing to really drive and execute and travel, as I mentioned, wearing my many hats. So excited about all of the, what we're bringing to market and what we've brought to market with our solutions in U.S. education and expanding our footprint and bringing more software to our clients to take all of their tuition payments. It's very, very exciting. We've got an incredible B2B business and our invoiced and software solutions, so our invoice to cash. So our team is busy at work of how do we continue to drive that into the market, and same in the healthcare space where we operating primarily in the U.S., but making sure that we're expanding to our large hospital and healthcare system. So certainly not busy. Now is always a good reflection point to say we're halfway through the year. There's lots coming up, but how do we make sure we are doubling down and really just executing?
Allison, wonderful having you on the show. For listeners, go check out flywire.com. Global payment network integrations, invoicing, API.
Yeah.
Got it all. Thanks again for joining. We really appreciate it. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, it was a pleasure being here and talking all things wicked too.
It's been a wicked day.
Wicked day.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.